Reform MP Sarah Poachin is absolutely fuming. Can you guess why?
Drives me mad when I see adverts full of black people, full of Asian people, full of, people that basically are anything
What's wrong
other
with that,
than
Sarah?
white.
What's
People who are anything but white. Like, of all the things to get fuming about, when I see adverts with black people, Asian people, anyone but white people, I'm furious. And we should be fair to Sarah. I mean, she doesn't deserve this, but and it doesn't excuse what she said. But there was a context here. As I say, the context doesn't excuse it, but will show you why she ended up saying that completely racist thing. This was the discussion that led up to that.
A bit left field, this one, but I think it's creepingly important. Would Reform do anything to look at the representation of the demographics of TV and public advertising? Because we're getting to the point now where adverts don't represent what this country looks like, and actually positive demonization of white people, just portrayed as criminals or inadequate when they're not portrayed anywhere else. Now, the reason why this is important, we got a case of art imitates life, because we're getting to the point where a number of my friends think that we're being discriminated like in employment markets because white men are seen as useless and whatever and just invisible. And there's one financial institution which coincidentally uses a strikingly similar image of Nigel in their advertising for an incompetent, useless, arrogant white male. I just wondered if that's something Reform would look into.
Okay, Stuart, stay where you are. Sarah, what do you think of what Stuart's saying? What would Reform UK do about it, if anything?
I think Stuart's absolutely right. Drives me mad when I see adverts full of black people, full of Asian people, full of, people that basically are anything.
What's wrong with that, Sarah? What's wrong with that?
Well, it doesn't reflect our society, and I feel that your average white person, average white family is like I agree with you, Stuart, not represented anymore in TV.
There are lots of white people on television, Sarah, or they're not. There are lots of white people. There are lots of white men. There are lots of white women.
We're talking about adverts, and how many times do you look at a TV advert and you think there's not a single white person on it? And actually it is. It's something that's happened because, I believe, of the woke liberati that goes on inside, this sort of like in the arty-farty world. When it comes to, northern towns like Runcorn that I represent, it's just not representative of the rest of the country. Might be fine inside the M25, but it's definitely not representative of the rest of the country. And actually, you know what, I'm hearing this more and more. People notice and people will switch off.
She's referring to some research which Channel 4 did on representation. I don't know. I don't know what she's referring to actually, but this is being discussed. There have been a few articles printed about it in the Daily Mail and the like, because Channel 4 did some research which found that compared to the demographics of the population, black people and other ethnic minorities, but especially black people, are overrepresented because they're only 4% of the population. And apparently, according to this, they feature in half of commercials. Now, the thing that she said, which is completely untrue, well, the thing that's completely unreasonable is that this makes her furious, that she gets very angry when she sees a black or an Asian person in an advert. That's, ridiculous and presumably comes from some form of racism. The bit that she said, which is completely untrue, is that there are loads of adverts without white people. Because what's happening here is that adverts are always very mixed. Now, apparently, actually, one group who's very underrepresented is disabled people. But when it comes to race, adverts will often have mixed race couples. There'll always be a scenario where there's a group of friends where one of them is white, one of them is a man, one of them is maybe gay. It's because as an advertiser, what you want to do is appeal to the maximum number of people possible. So if you show that you're inclusive to white people and black people and Asian people, or people say, oh, this is for everyone, the only people you're going to really turn off are people who are really racist. And you have to be really racist to get turned off by an advert because it has a mixed race couple in it, for example. So there's a much more mundane explanation for this than what Sarah Poachin is suggesting. This is sort of a business strategy where you say you want to appeal to as many people as possible. So you do have an unusually large number of sort of mixed race couples or mixed race families in advertising. The comments that she made, though, especially how angry it makes her to see black and brown people in adverts, has angered an awful lot of people. Whether they all hail from the woke liberati is an open question. Health Secretary Wes Streeting certainly seemed upset about it while speaking to the BBC's Laura Kuenssberg.
I think what she said was a disgrace. I think it was racist, and the deafening silence from her party leader says it all. Reform is a party who think that our flag only belongs to some of us who look like me, not all of us who have built this country, built its success. And let's not forget, when we remember the service and the sacrifice with this poppy, that the people who bled and died for our democracy and our freedom weren't just my grandfather and my great-grandfather who looked like me and worshipped the same God as me. It was people from right across what was then the empire, now the Commonwealth. People who are Muslim, people who are Sikh, people who are Hindu, people who look differently than you and I do. And we should remember that, defend it, and fight for what this country stands for, a decent, respectful and inclusive democracy, the most successful multi-faith democracy in the world. We stand for that, Reform don't, and that's why they're not fit to govern.
That was Wes Streeting continuing his leadership campaign. Justice Secretary David Lammy has also weighed in, calling for Pochen to be sacked.
These were terribly racist remarks. Nigel Farage should sack her effectively and certainly say something and apologise for what she has said today. I'm disgusted by what she said, not just on behalf of myself or my family or the people of London, but on behalf of our country.
Since then, Farage has commented on Pochen's remarks.
The remarks were ugly, clumsy, put in a way that if you take them literally as they are on their own, you can put the worst of all interpretations on it. I understand the context in which she said it. I don't like the way in which she did it. I am very unhappy with her indeed. But if I felt the intention was deliberately and genuinely racist, I would have taken a different course of action.
So Farage says that we shouldn't take the comments literally. And of course, being Nigel Farage, he would not tolerate it if this was genuine racism. However, this is by no means an isolated incident for the party. So last year, its campaigners were caught telling people the party would be kicking all the Muslims out of the mosques and turning them into Wetherspoons. And a few months ago, they hired an ex-Tory MP who had had the whip withdrawn for using the N-word. Anne-Marie Morris is now in charge of Reform's social care policy. And there's Laura Ann Jones, another ex-Tory and Reform's only politician in the Welsh Parliament, who used an anti-Chinese slur in a WhatsApp chat. I won't read you the slur, but you can see here we kicked up a stink about TikTok to group, so, and then some laughing, and then no, and then the derogatory word for Chinese people, spies for me. Farage is yet to say if we're supposed to take that literally or not. But he has defended someone for using the same slur in the past. So this was back in 2014 when he said a UKIP candidate who had been forced to resign for using racist language had been a victim of snobbery. And again, that was the same derogatory word for Chinese people. Curtis, what do you make of this? I mean, there are lots of right-wing people getting annoyed about this analysis about representation in adverts. It is rather odd to get so annoyed about seeing black and brown people on billboards or in between programs on television.
Well, if I'm going to be honest, right, I think if you speak to a lot of people, they may actually agree with her. I think, and by the way, this is not my defense of her. Obviously, what she said is unfathomably racist. I mean, she quite literally said, I'm getting really, really mad because I'm seeing black and brown and Asian faces. It's wild to me. And there's, of course, a lot of right-wing people saying she should never apologise because, of course, the Overton window has moved to the right. So I actually think this is a deliberate strategy from Reform. What they're doing is say something quite outlandish, something that maybe they can't get away with saying without apologising. Nigel Farage will come in and very cleverly say, no, I'm very cross with her. But he doesn't attack the argument. He just says the way she said it was bad, right? But that puts that sort of idea on the agenda. She'll apologise for it. And then she did actually say, look, I'm sorry for the way the point I tried to make, but the point still stands. And then she went on to say, we have issues with DEI in this country. Insane that, obviously Reform are once again trying to import sort of American political lines and political narratives. Sorry, no one knows what DEI means really. And it sort of moves the agenda. So I think that is a definite sort of deliberate political strategy. What I find quite interesting, though, is that the right have basically done the inverse of liberal identity politics. So if you think maybe between 2010, 2015, 2016, the sort of political correctness was probably at its strongest, we should say, liberal identity politics was actually kind of successful. All political parties, whether they meant it or not, whether they believed it through policy, there was, quote unquote, say the right things, right? David Cameron sort of hug a hoodie. Always that line always sticks in my head because I know he didn't really care about these things, but it was about the political correctness, right? And it was successful, but short-lived, because as you can see, the political debate has really, really changed from, well, political correctness to what we have today, saying there's too many black and brown people on TV. So what do I mean when I say, if you were to speak to your average person, they might get it? It's because I've heard it so much. But usually it doesn't incite the kind of anger that Sarah Pochin was displaying on Talk TV. I've heard comments here and there saying, oh, it does seem that there's quite a lot of people of colour on there. I mean, you know, it's not reflective in reality. And that's kind of it. People sort of, you know, go about their day. I mean, look, speaking as a brown person, a person of colour, my reaction is sometimes I'll watch an example. You've got a classroom. It's basically one white kid there. And I might think it's a little bit cringe because it's like, that's not really reality. It is sort of diversity slightly overblown, and that's about it. Or my other thought would be probably they're trying to represent an area that has a higher minority demographic, and that's it, right? But I don't get offended. And likewise, if I see, which is the reality, like 90% of people on TV are white, I also don't get offended too. So what is the point here? Well, obviously, 4%, apparently 4% of the country are people of color, black, right? And yes, there is an overrepresentation in the media. But basically, this is kind of the similar thing with Target, and you touched upon that, which is in America, Target had the sort of woke capitalism thing. And people on the right thought it was a sort of an infusion of pushing culture, politics on the people, when really it was just free market capitalism. The point is businesses want to make as much money as possible. They see a market for it, and that is it. You know, Target don't care about their queer employees. They don't care about trans people. They just, you know, fly the flag to look inclusive to make money. And you're absolutely right. It's the same when it comes to TV, right? They're just looking at the cultural and ethnic makeup of the country, and they just want to be seen as representative, not because they're like big racial campaigners. It's simply because of, you know, representing their market share, and also, yeah, sort of a liberal identity politics thing. And I think that I actually heard something really interesting from one of your colleagues, Aaron Bastani. I think he was saying how he spoke to Ash Sarkar before she released the Minority Rule book. And it really stuck with me. And he said, I think the real big failure of liberal identity politics is you're going to see a sort of real strong consciousness of white politics or white reactionaries. And that's kind of what's happened. It's why I like to call right-wingers like soy woke and snowflakes, because they basically just taken liberal identity politics, the thing that they say they hate the most, and just made it on their terms. And the big problem with both of them is, one, obviously, the right wing, it's very, very racist. But the problem with those of us on the left had a lot of issues with sort of liberal identity politics is there's no class analysis there. You know, you would see sort of well-meaning people want to see representation in positions of power. You want to see people of color, different gender, you know, like I said, representation, right? But it doesn't matter what the views are. It doesn't matter if their views are very much of the political establishment. That doesn't matter as long as it looks okay. I mean, I remember seeing a clip, I think it was this morning, don't quote me on that. And it was a brown journalist speaking to Rishi Sunak, and someone tweeted saying, regardless of their political views, regardless, right? Isn't it fantastic that you're seeing a brown journalist interviewing a brown prime minister? And me, again, as a brown guy, I was thinking, no, this is a Tory PM, like the richest prime minister we've ever had, you know, still using austerity. In fact, the cuts are going to hit probably people of color the worst. What matters really is policies, and what matters is if you have decent economic policies. I mean, which is why most of the left got behind an old white guy in Jeremy Corbyn in 2017, because ultimately what matters is your political views and policies, whereas liberals completely ignore the class analysis, push this, kind of liberal identity politics, which again, I think it's well-meaning. And now we've seen the sort of inverse of that from the right wing, which is pushing their own culture and their own identity politics. I'm just completely sick of it.
I think probably what we're going to see with artificial intelligence, I know everyone hates it when I talk about artificial intelligence, but I think what we're going to see very soon with cameras everywhere and artificial intelligence is all ads are going to include ourselves. So you're going to open your phone and you're going to be scrolling, and it's going to be you wearing the clothes, looking really good. That's just a prediction from me. And then it will be really unrepresentative because you'll just see your own demographic.